Welcome to it, all you grade 12 mindsetters. Yes, it's a Thursday and it's time for business studies. I am Looney and with me is Tanya. How are you doing, Tanya?
I'm really well, and you?
I'm good, thank you. So what are we doing on today's show?
Today we're looking at business solutions, but more specifically being creative in business and how that's going to help you as an entrepreneur and your business just grow.
Okay, so you heard it for yourselves, grade 12s. We're doing business solutions and whatever Tanya said. So Tanya, go to your board while I tell the mindsetters a few more bits of information. So you guys can hit me up on Twitter at LearnExtra, on Facebook at facebook.com/LearnExtra. Do not forget to download all your show notes at learnextra.co.za/live. Talk to me, ask me any questions, and I'll be on the page constantly giving you feedback. I'd like to thank Macmillan for giving us this great show, and thank you for sponsoring us today. I'll hand over to Tanya right now, and we'll get the show on the road.
Hi guys, so like I said earlier, today we're going to be looking at being creative. Now, a few lessons ago we looked at creative thinking techniques, which you did in grade 11, and I'm going to remind you about that a little bit later on. So we're going to start the lesson off by looking at some keywords. So the very first keyword I want you to look at is creative thinking. So what is creative thinking? It's basically using your brain power to solve problems. Now, the nice thing with being creative or creative thinking is that it's not necessarily something you're born with. Yes, you could be born with it, but it's something you can learn and improve on. The second concept is being vague. So vague is just not something that's not properly defined. Now, you can imagine if there's a business situation and something is vague, obviously you're not going to be able to make the right choices and your business might suffer. And the last concept is unconventional. Now, this is when something is conventional, and it means that it's not done in the normal way, and it is new, different, or innovative. And I'm going to tie back into this a little bit later on, but being innovative is so important as an entrepreneur. You need to go out there and look at what everybody else is looking at, but see it in a different way. And that is what being creative is, and that's what being innovative is, really. Now, let's go to the first slide. The first slide, we're looking at creative thinking. Now, the very first part of creative thinking is that a person is creative if they can perceive things differently. Now, a nice way of thinking about this is if you take a piece of blank paper and you put it on a table and you put 4 people around that and they look at this piece of paper, chances are one person's going to look at that piece of paper, that blank piece of paper, and say, oh, it's so boring. And somebody else, they might think and look at this piece of paper and go, oh my word, there's a world of possibilities here. This can be turned into an airplane. I can draw on it. I can change the shape of it. And that is what being creative is about. You can look at the blank piece of paper, or you can see all the possibilities that's there. Now, the next one, creativity involves being innovative. In other words, introducing new ideas. Also, being creative or creative thinking would be when you think outside the box. And another point, to look at challenges in a different way. Now again, can you see how this all ties back to business? You want to start a new business, or you're lucky and you see a gap in the market and you use your creative thinking in conjunction with being an entrepreneur to start this business. So creativity goes hand in hand with starting a business, running a business, and even just being successful in general. Another thing with creative thinking, creative thinkers always think in original and open-ended ways. Now, he or she creates new circumstances through new ways of thinking. So let's think about, I love the invention of an MP3 player. For a very long time, when I was growing up, the cool thing was to have a Walkman, which was a tape. I don't even know if some of you know what that is. If you don't know, go ask your parents. So you'd have a tape player, and you'd have to wear this big old thing, and then we got cool, and we got CD players, and then we had this big old, imagine the size of a CD, and you carrying that around. And then through somebody being creative and using technology, they created MP3 players. Now we can walk around with something about this size in our pocket and listen to music all day. And all of those things happened because somebody sat and they thought about, what is the problem? The problem is it's too big to walk around with this big thing on your hip like a CD. And it developed from there. So all of you mindsetters out there, remember, every one of us has the potential to be a great entrepreneur. So look around you and see what everybody else isn't seeing. Another creative thing would be to think creatively to assist you in making a success of the business in a competitive business world. And another point, I'm going to do one more point with you. You can get the rest on the website. Creativity is to use new ideas on existing challenges. Now, if you think back to that lesson we did on the grade 11 techniques with Scamper, for example, where you take a product and you change it around. You look at what is the existing product, what can I add to it, what can I take away from it to make it something completely different. And again, so remember, I'm just tying you back into that. Grade 11 creative thinking. They can bring this into your grade 12 finals, prelims. So if you don't have those notes, look on the website. I've put some on for you before, and just catch up with those. The next thing I want to look at today is why is creative thinking so important to business? Now, at school, you need to be creative when you're doing your work, etc. Now, you can imagine if you're in the business world, if you are starting a business, you need to be creative in yourself to get that business going. Or if you're working for somebody, being creative will help the business, and in the long run, as well, yourself. So creativity, vital, vital, vital. Now, the first point here you'll see is that, do you remember our definition of an entrepreneur? So we said that an entrepreneur is someone who sees an opportunity, takes a risk, thinks creatively, and innovates. Now, remember that innovation means to bring a completely new product to the market. So as an entrepreneur, you need to be creative to help you start your business, run your business, get it going. So entrepreneurship, creativity, innovation go hand in hand. Why else would business need to be, or why else is it important in the business world to be creative? The second point there, in order to be innovative, we must be able to adhere to thinking creatively. The second point now, so the business world is dynamic and challenging. With challenges come problems. Let me read that again to you one more time. So the business world is dynamic and challenging. With challenges comes problems. So think back, guys, all the way back to our very first lesson where we looked at strategic responses to problems in the macro environment. Now, in the macro environment, we know that there are challenges and responses. And then we also looked at different types of techniques, so defensive strategies, intensive strategies. Now, those strategies, do you see how, so we've got the strategies, we've got the market environment, and then we jump to this, where we're looking at challenges, and these challenges can be overcome by looking or being creative, innovative. So all of that, I know that was a whole lot of information, guys, but draw the link. So we've got the macro environment, we've got challenges, we've got responses, and we've got innovation. Another reason we look at why businesses need to be creative, we can't allow problems to get in the way and hold us up. And therefore, we need to be able to think creatively, to find solutions, and to implement them and move on. So there's three things happening here, guys. So let's have a look. Take your pencils. So we can't allow problems to get in our way and to hold us up. And therefore, we need to be able to think creatively. So that's the first part. To find solutions, the second part. And to implement them, thirdly. And the fourth part here is move on. Okay, so we identify it, we think creatively, we implement it, and we move on. And with moving on, they mean, sort the problem out so that you can carry on to more important things or bigger things. Or moving on could also be where you look at it in a different way and try in that creative manner to improve your problem. Another point, it's not only managers and entrepreneurs who need to be able to think creatively. Everybody today needs to confront problems and deal with them swiftly, or they will get the better of us, literally. Now, a company that lacks creativity is a weak company and will not survive. So in other words, if a company has been going for 5 years, imagine, or just think about how much has changed in 5 years, guys. So 5 years ago, we had a certain amount of technology. Let's just go with cell phones, right? Think about the cell phone you had 5 years ago. Yeah, probably not all that great, right? Now, think of the cell phone you have today. It's amazing. It's literally a little computer in your pocket. So what I'm saying with this point is that if a company doesn't move with the times, or if a company isn't willing to change, okay, it will become weak because it's not being forward-thinking, it's not being creative, and they will get stuck there. And chances are if your business is running the same way it did 5 years ago, it's falling behind. And the very last point here, a creative company has a competitive edge in the marketplace. So companies that keep up to date, companies that, up to date with technology, companies that carry on doing market research, companies that are out there making sure that they know what consumers want and change with it, or not just change with it, but improve on what people want, they will be successful. Let's go to another slide. So that was us looking at why businesses want creative people with them, why businesses need to be creative. Another point here is, what do we need to be creative? And I think that's a very valid question, because I've just been carrying on about you need to be creative, businesses need to be creative. What do you need as an individual, but also what do businesses need for them, their employees, to be creative? So the very first thing we look at here is that creativity is something that can be developed in everyone. So you might be sitting at home going, oh, I just draw stick figures, I can't sing, I'm not creative. Now that is not being creative. Creative is literally being able to sit there and think of something in a different way. So everybody can be creative. And the nice thing about being creative is the more you know, the more you look at, the more you read, the more you'll just be more creative because you know so much more. So knowledge will breed creativity. Now, because everybody can be creative, this means that it can be learned. Now, in order to find creative solutions to problems, we need to process 3 characteristics. Now, the very first characteristic in how to be creative, or looking at being creative, is personal know-how. Now, number 1 looks at, so with personal know-how, it's a combination of skills, expertise, and aptitude. Now, the more you know, or the more knowledge we have, and the more expertise we have, the better equipped we will be to find creative solutions to problems. So like I said, so the first one with personal know-how is literally the more you read, the more you look at, going on the internet, for example, is a really good example, because you can learn so much. So the more you know, the more creative you'll be. So number 1, personal know-how. Number 2, we look at involvement. Now, involvement looks at if we are involved with the problem, such as being directly affected by it, the more motivated we will be to come up with a solution. So with involvement, it's logical, guys. Think about your own life. Your friends, you've got a friend who's got a problem, and you're sympathetic, and you're like, I'm so sorry about this. And you'll be there for them, but it's not really your problem, right? So you'll think of solutions, but I'm sorry. But if it's your problem, it's a whole different story, right? You sitting there trying to figure out, how am I going to fix this? And that is what being involved or involvement is about. If you're in a company, they've got problems, you should personally invest in trying to find a solution to this problem, because the more you are involved, the more you will give. Another point to this, the more motivated we are, the better levels of performance and the more successful we will be. Another point, we generally work much harder or put in more effort at solving problems that directly affect us than we would solving problems of somebody else, really. And I've discussed that, really, just as we're going through this, think about it. My problem, your problem. Chances are I'm going to do a little bit more work if it's my problem. The last point here, being involved with the problem also means that you bring your own unique thoughts and ideas to the problem-solving table. So besides you doing more effort and you getting more involved, with you involving yourself, you've got a very specific way of solving problems. And this is a good way, and this is actually being creative. The more people you get to look at something, the more ideas will come out of it, because we're all different. So being involved will just by default make you more creative, because you're trying to get in there, you're trying to solve the problem. Now I want to go to 3 after the break, so I can have your minds all fresh. So I'm going to hand you over to Looney.
Alright guys, we are going to take a very short break, but don't you go anywhere. I'd just like to remind you guys to enter the Future Stars competition, because there's so much to win. Urge your friends to vote for you, enter, Guys, there's a lot up for grabs on this page. We do have the information on our Facebook page, so just go onto that and you'll see what you need to do in order to enter. Right now, though, we are going to go for a very short break, so don't you go anywhere. Welcome back, Mindsetters. I hope you're refreshed and you're ready to get more information from Tanya. I hope you jotted down everything that she said in the beginning, because there was a lot to take in from all that she said in the beginning. Right now, though, we are going to go straight to Tanya. So, Tanya, take it away.
Okay, so before the break, we were looking at the 3 steps to, or 3 things to, why do you think you need to be creative, or the steps to being creative. So the very first one, remember, is personal know-how. So number 1 was personal know-how. Number 2 was involvement. And the last one to this, or the last part to this, we are looking at creative thinking skills. Now, with creative thinking skills, we need to know how to tackle a problem, and this includes knowing the various options we have to find solutions. So with this point, it's looking at basically, do you know how to brainstorm? Brainstorming, trying force field analysis, all those grade 11 techniques that I've mentioned earlier. So the first point looks at literally just brainstorming. The second one, and remember we're looking at creative thinking skills, the skill is the ability to critically examine a problem from all angles and analyze as well as evaluate solutions. Now, this is a skill that can be taught, and remember, you always have to keep your thinking cap on. So once again, for those of you sitting at home going, oh, I'm not creative, I can't do this, creativity can be learned. You improve your skills, you can do different, even if you play, I was just thinking, even if you play online games, it forces you, or different types of like video games, stuff like that, it forces you to think in creative and different ways. And if you can do that, you know what, you're already a creative thinker. So all of you at home, you can be creative, and that skill could be used later on in life if you want to start a business or be productive in a business. The next slide I prepared for you is just looking at problem solving. Now, problem solving and creative thinking go hand in hand. Why? Because if there's a problem in a creative and in a different way, you need to be able to tackle this problem to solve it in a successful manner. So problem solving is, okay, let's look at the definition. So creative thinking is more important than ever in the business world, because the business's success is often determined by the employee's ability to come up with new ideas, to be innovative and create innovative solutions, and to convert problems into opportunities. Now, while we're busy with that, that just made me think, remember, if we're changing opportunities into threats, this would be part of a SWOT analysis. So once again, remember, all these things tie up, guys. And the second point to problem solving is problem solving refers to a person's ability to find solutions for difficult situations. So problem solving is literally your ability to come up with creative solutions. And the last point here, problem solving is a skill that can be required. So once again, you can teach yourself how to be successful at problem solving. Now the next slide I brought up here looks at barriers to being creative. So now we've looked at why is being creative important for business. We've looked at what is problem solving. And like I mentioned earlier, some of you think, oh, I'm not creative. And this is a way of looking at what are the barriers to being creative. And also know, if you know what the barrier is, you also know how to break that barrier. And in the business world, that will obviously be very vital. So let's look at the first barrier to being creative. Now, there are many things that can prevent us from thinking and acting creatively. So here are there's 3 of them for you guys. The first one, or the first barrier, would be social barriers. And this is literally like the word is telling you, social barriers. So what is holding you back socially from being more creative? And the first point I've got here is that many people fear rejection or making a fool of themselves and may be reluctant to offer their ideas and suggestions. So think about when you work in a group, for example. So your teacher gives you a project, you have to do group work, and you're working with people you don't necessarily know very well, and you feel a bit shy to say what you want to say or give your input for the project, because you're feeling reluctant, you don't want people to think you're silly, or you don't want people to reject your idea. And that's the same with being, that is holding yourself back from being creative. So the first point is fearing rejection. Another social barrier would be most people don't like taking risks and change. And so they keep on doing the same thing and avoiding risks and change completely. So a second social barrier would be people are creatures of habit. So I know I like doing things a certain way and it works, or I think it works, so I'm going to do it the exact same way every time. And if you do that, you're not being creative. You're not giving yourself a chance to do something new or try something new. Yeah. The third barrier we're looking at today, some companies are very autocratic and tell everybody what to do rather than asking them for their opinion. So if you are working in a company that basically tells you this is how you'll do it, this is how I want you to do it, and this is by when this is the deadline, your company is not giving you a chance to be creative. And later on in the year, when we look at forms of leadership, autocratic will come up. But you should remember the autocratic leadership style from previous years. Remember, autocratic leadership is basically you're the boss, you tell them how it's done, when it's done, and that is it. So an autocratic leadership style does not lend itself to employees being creative. Another point, and this is looking at another leadership style, is that in a democratic organization, although orders have to be followed, there are opportunities to question the way things are done, and new ideas are welcomed. So the first one we looked at was autocratic. The second one we are looking at today, or looking at now, is a democratic system. Now, in a democratic type of company, they still, obviously there are goals they want to achieve or things that they want to achieve in a specific way, and you have to go with that. But in a democratic company, you have the freedom to say, well, I know we're doing it this way, what if we try it another way? So you've got the freedom to express your ideas, and this is encouraging you to be creative. And remember, a business wants their employees to be creative, because that way they can get new ideas and improve their business. The third leadership style here, which I would probably refer to as a bit more laissez-faire, and again, this is another form. This one looks at some forward-thinking companies offer prizes and incentives to get people to come up with innovative ideas that can be put into place. So this is the third way. So the first one is autocratic, the second one was democratic, and this one is looking at a company that literally wants their employees to be creative. I know of an example of a company where they've got a big whiteboard in their front office, and when people get ideas for an advert, they can write it on the board, and if that idea gets chosen, they get a prize, literally a prize, a money prize for that. And that is getting people to think out the box, to give your business ideas, and it might be an idea that you would never have thought of. So a forward-thinking company will definitely get creative people going. The next slide is the second one, physical barriers to being creative. So a physical barrier literally looks at physical things you can touch that get in your way, or things that will physically affect your body that's going to stop you from being creative. The very first point I've got here is noise. So noise will definitely stop you from being creative. Now, when I say noise, I'm not talking about having some music, maybe a little soft music in the background. Literally think about when people are doing construction work or loud noises. It puts you off, you can't think. So noises would be noises would be physical barriers, as well as things as, think about when you're really cold, you can't think really well, so you're not going to be creative. If it's really warm, you're not thinking very well. And so all these things that physically affect you will also affect your creativity. So let's look at what else I've got here. So distractions like noise inhibit your ability to focus and to think creatively. It's also very difficult to be creative if we are not comfortable. For example, if you're too hot, too cold, if you're hungry, tired, cross, upset, or you're doing boring work. Another physical barrier would be we get inspiration from our surroundings. And thus, we need to be as relaxed and as comfortable as possible to make our creative juices flow. So you need to be relaxed, you need to be comfortable for you to be creative. The third point after this is I look at literally your surroundings. So if you are working in an office that's painted white, there's nothing interesting in the room, you've got no pictures, you've got nothing happening, this will influence your creativity. So let's have a look. So people who have set routines, such as always having, oh, I skipped. Okay, so we're going to give, so I'm going to do this one first, and I'll get back to the second one I just mentioned. So people who have set routines, like always having their lunch at a set time and always going to bed at the same time, are also not very creative, as they don't like any variation. So if you always do the same thing every day, you're not giving yourself an opportunity to be different. And then to skip to that point, which I got all excited about, because I like working in pretty places, so I want to quickly sum these three up for you. So being in a place that is aesthetically pleasing will inspire you. Not working to a routine every day will also inspire you. So those are the physical barriers. Let's go to the third one. The third barrier looks at a narrow mindset. Now, the way we view life can be a huge barrier to our creativity. Now, if we only focus on a small section of the problem, we will not be able to be creative. That is why we always need to try and see the big picture. So the big message with having a narrow mindset is that if we always think of things in the same way, we're never going to go further. So with a narrow mindset, if you get a problem, don't look at specifics, look at the big picture. So those are the barriers to being creative. For the points I didn't go through, just go on the website, you can check it out. A lot of the stuff's it's obvious, guys, but don't think that it's obvious enough to not study. You have to study this to get the right impression across, that you know what you're talking about. Now, I mentioned that you need to remember your grade 11 problem-solving techniques. There's the Delphi technique, we've discussed that. There's the force field analysis, Scamper, empty chair, as well as Simplex. Now, those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 grade 11 problem-solving techniques, I have notes for, you can get them. I'm not going to go into detail, guys, because we're just doubling up and we're wasting your precious time if we're doing that. So creative techniques, if you don't have them, find them. And then I want to go to questions. So I have some questions here for you today. Should we go for a break before I do the questions? Yeah.
Okay. Guys, you're going to take a very short break, but before we do, I'd like to mention a few people on Facebook. Tim Zana Nomafu says, thank you guys, you help us a lot. This semester I got up to 87% in business studies, and she says, thank you, well done for that 87%. And then like he says, thank you guys, keep up the good work, and so much more positivity coming from you guys. I'd like to thank you so much for keeping in contact with me on Facebook. Do remember you can also hit us up on Twitter. Twitter has been very quiet today, so the Twitterverse needs to just light up with all your comments and your questions and anything you have to say about the show. It is at Learn Extra. Right now, though, we are going to take a very short break, so don't you go anywhere, because after this, Tanya will start with the questions. Welcome back, guys. I hope you're ready to start with the questions. But before we do, we've got this nice little prize box in here to do the lucky draw for another book to be won. So, Tanya, if we'll do the honors.
I'm going to look away, close my eyes. Okay, got it.
Yes.
One. Okay.
And the winner is Goodman Masimola from, what's this? Mabesala Senior Secondary. So, congratulations, you have won yourself a book, and then we'll just take this one and see which book you've won.
I'm going to hold this one and you can take.
Okay. Let's just. There you go. And you have won Tell the Wolves I'm Home by Carol Rivka Bront. Well done. Congratulations. Your book will be sent to you shortly. Okay, Tanya, I think we should take it away.
Okay, so we're going to go back.
All right.
So before the break, I finished up looking at blocks being creative. And one last time, guys, just remember, everybody's creative. And if you don't feel that you're a naturally creative person, go and learn. Read a book, develop your skills, look at problem-solving techniques, and I promise you this will all improve what you're doing. So what I have now for us, if you want to take out your Macmillan textbook and follow along on page 127, activity 7. And this is a nice way of looking at problem solving and taking problem solving and making it practical, guys. So this is, like I said, page 127, activity 7. So here's a picture, and there's a lady standing in the middle of what looks like a factory, and she says, we really have problems to solve in this factory. So keep that in mind as I go up. So Sue Mashlango, a BCom graduate from UNISA, had been working as a clerk in a large company for the last 6 years. Now, when her aunt Maggie asked her to join her successful knitting factory, which she has started 3 years ago, Sue was very interested. Now, the company was receiving orders from receiving orders for jerseys, but despite the high demand for their quality products due to reasonable prices, Maggie has been unable to keep things at the company running smoothly. Now, Sue found that the factory was in disarray. No one knew who to turn to for advice, what quantities to produce, and what quality standards to adhere to. Now, Sue knew that she needed to find solutions to the problems. So there's a lot happening here, guys. And as we do the question, we'll go back up to this. So the question is asking us, identify the various problems in the factory by looking at the artwork and reading the case study. So the first thing we need to do here is look at the artwork. And let's see. So there's a gentleman here running around. You can see he's sweating, stressing. Another problem we can identify here, the lady's sitting here and it looks like there's a problem with her sewing machine. Another thing here, looks like a grumpy old guy there, cobwebs, obviously not enough work happening there, things lying around, and again, more things lying around. So those are the things we can identify in the picture. If we go back to the case study, we could see that Sue found the factory in disarray. No one knew who to turn to. No one knew what quantities to produce and what quality standards to adhere to. So with question A, let's make some space and we'll answer this together. So A, what are the problems we found? First one is that there is high demand and from the looks of the picture and the case study, there's high demand, but they can't necessarily, they can't supply it. So there's high demand and they can't continuously supply this. Another issue is that they tell us this in the case study, that the factory isn't running smoothly. So it is not running well. A third problem here, so let's label that C. A third problem is that there are no defined roles or responsibilities. So in other words, these people don't know what to do, when to do it, because they're not getting any guidance. And I'll do 2 more with you. And let's have a look at the picture. What else can you identify? You'll see there, from this you can see that they don't know how much to produce, and they also don't know what quality to produce this at. So we can say, sorry, I just want to relabel this and make this just point 2 and point 3. This will be point 4. They are not sure on the quantity or the quality. Now, the reason they want you to identify the problems in this case study is for you to see, okay, so what isn't working there? So what is wrong? So what's wrong? People don't know what to do. The company isn't running as smoothly as it could. Orders are coming in. People don't know what quality. And when they mean if they don't know what quality, if I produce a jersey and if you produce a jersey, they're going to be of two different qualities. And if you've got a company, it needs to have a set standard. So those are the problems, and I suspect what they want you to do with this activity, look at the problems and then find a creative way of solving these issues, or at least a way of solving the issues. So we've identified the problems. Let's go have a look at the second question. Use the steps discussed to solve these problems up to the finding workable, logical, and reasonable solutions. So we've identified the problems. What we're going to be doing now is looking at solutions. And what I've done for you for B, these are the steps. Please do me a favor and write these steps down. These are vital. And you can even give this, grab a piece of paper, grab your business book, write this down. So these are problem solving steps. And we're going to use these problem-solving steps to sort out the problems in the factory. So the very first problem-solving step would be to identify or to define the problem. Now, there are a couple of problems in this factory, and you can't just go, the problem is everything. So what you'll probably have to do is choose one and go through each problem individually. So let's go with people not knowing what quantity to produce. So what is the problem? The problem is let's call it unclear quantities produced. The second part in the problem-solving steps would be to analyze the problem. So the first one was let's identify the problem. The second part is let's analyze the problem. So remember what problem we're looking at? We're looking at not quantity, not enough, the quantities aren't correct. So what does the analyzing the problem mean? For me, to analyze the problem would be orders will probably not be met properly. So analyze the problem. Orders not met because of unclear quantities. The third part of the problem-solving technique would be to identify solutions. So now we have defined the problem. What is the problem? Unclear quantities being produced. Then we analyzed the problem, and then we analyzed, and what we found was orders are not being met. I'm sorry. And number 3, identify solutions. So what can we do to rectify the problem of orders not being met? So we can, my solutions would be, first one, create a schedule. So with the schedule, look at what the order quantities are and sticking to it. Or you could place a foreman in charge to make sure things are working out. You can give people set daily goals. With this part, guys, you can literally make hundreds of them as long as you look at each of them. So that was number 3. Number 4, choose the best solution. So we have now in step 3 looked at possible solutions. My favorite solution would be to create a schedule. So you're choosing your best solution. The best solution would be a schedule, so people can stick to it. And number 5, we look at implementing solution. So with implementing the solution, you are literally going to take a big, create a computer program, spreadsheets, whatever you need to do, but you're going to create a schedule and stick it up. So implement the solution on a board at work or on a wall. You are going to stick up the schedule so people know how much they must produce every day. And lastly, would be to evaluate the chosen solution. So now we've implemented the schedule. Now to evaluate it, we need to, on a daily, weekly basis, go and see, are the workers sticking to the schedule and is the schedule working? Now, I love this problem solving steps because you can use this with everything. So before we go to the next question, I'm going to give it over to Looney.
All right. We'd just like to repeat that Goodman Masimula from Vumabesala Senior Secondary won the book Tell the Wolves I'm Home by Rivka Brandt. So congratulations to you. Guys, the Twitterverse is very quiet for my liking. Please hit us up on Twitter. Tell us what you think of the show. Ask us any questions and just talk to us, guys. It's been too quiet. Don't forget to enter yourselves and your friends and your friends' friends and your cousins and everyone into the Future Stars competition because you've got so much to win, guys. So ask your friends to vote for you as well after you've entered, and I have posted some of the information that you may need to enter the competition, so check out our Facebook page. Right now though, let's take a very short break and we'll be back straight after this. Welcome back, guys. You're still chilling with me, Looney and Tanya, and we're working on business studies for grade 12. So without further ado, I'll take it back to Tanya.
Okay, so before the break, guys, remember we looked at the first question in how to be creative, and we looked at the problem solving steps to helping with a problem. The second question I've got here is from a previous exam paper, and it looks at, again, we're going to look at creative ways of fixing things. So grab a pen. If you can follow along, it'll be great. So this is the second question. And remember, I'm going to tell you this every time I underline something. Whenever you get a case study, grab your highlighter and just underline all the important things. It'll help you answer questions later on. So Extra Mining Company. So Extra Mining Company in Ermelo is mining asbestos, which is a highly toxic substance. They want to open a second mine in Badplaas. So they want to open a second mine. The area is next to a breeding ground for different types of birds and freshwater fish. It is also a popular tourist attraction, which is frequently visited by environmentalists and international tourists. Most residents are unskilled and unemployed. So the people living in the area are unskilled, unemployed. Now, there are very few shops and no recreational facilities for the community. The mine will create, the mine will create employment for the local people by building a school and a clinic. The environmental groups are opposed to the mining operation at Badplaas, which is, remember, this is the second place they want to open. They believe that the waste products from the mine will pollute the wetlands, and members of the local community may suffer from asbestos, which is a disease contracted from asbestos mining. See, a lot happening here, but if you come back to it, it'll be easy for you to answer questions. So the very first question here is asking you, apply the force field problem solving technique to address the above problem. Now, a force field, if you think back to your grade 11, a force field problem solving technique looks at all the problems looks all the issues for and against a problem. In other words, a force field analysis looks at the pros and cons. So the question was, looking at the case study, create a force field analysis with the information to help you come up with a solution. So the first part of a force field analysis, so step 1, would be to define the problem. And in the case here, defining the problem would be opening a second mine in Badplaas. The second step is literally to create a table showing the pros and cons. So quickly grab a piece of paper. As I'm doing this, you can do it with me, creating the do's and don'ts, really. So let's make this the pro side, and let's make this the con side. Remember, pros and cons, this would be what are the advantages, and this would be what are the disadvantages. Let's draw a line down, and Referring back to that case study, I just want to quickly show you that one more time. There was a lot happening here. So from the case study, when you're sitting in the exam, take the highlighted bits, look at all the advantages and look at all the disadvantages. So what I'm going to be doing with you, let's first do all the advantages and then or pros, and then we can do all the disadvantages. The first advantage was that they are going to provide training and skills to the community, and this will, in the long run, obviously create employment for the locals, because remember the local people there were unskilled and mostly unskilled and untrained for what they wanted to do. The second advantage, if they create a second mine, more people have to be involved. So they're educating people, so they're creating jobs. So yes, tourism will suffer, but the economic development will counteract that financially. So the second advantage would be the economic growth will replace the tourism. The third advantage here that I found was that they are developing clinics and obviously helping the people in their community. On the other hand, guys, obviously, so we've looked at all the advantages. Let's have a look at the disadvantages. I actually really want to fix that. I'm sorry. Clinics. So they are building or developing clinics. On the con side, or the side against this, the first thing they're going to do, or the first thing against building the mine, would be that there is not enough skilled labor. So skilled labor shortage. The second disadvantage would be that tourism is affected. Tourism is affected. And with that point, so tourism is affected, but it's also going to mean the environment's going to be affected. And that, to me, that's just as negative. So remember that the environment's going to be affected. And the third disadvantage would be to start a second mine would be a really large capital outlay. In other words, what I mean with a large capital outlay, you can imagine, so they want to open a second farm at Badplaas. That is going to cost literally millions and millions of rands. So they're going to have a lot of money available to do this. Now, with the force field analysis, what you do is you usually list about 4 or 5. I needed 3 with you today. But you're going to do a few. And then what you're going to do is you're going to score it. And beforehand, you can decide the weighting. So you can say it's going to go from 1 being it's not such a great point to 5 being this is really important. And the reason for this is, we can quickly do this. So training and skills development to employ or help people get employed, I would say this is a 5. Then economic growth will replace tourism. I'll make that a 2. And developing clinics for people, that's really important. So we'll weigh that a 5. On the other side, there's a shortage of skilled labor. That's quite a serious problem. So I'll make that a 3. The tourism affected, again, I think that will be a negative. So that will definitely be a 3. And large capital outlay, which is serious. So I'll make that a 5. And with a force field analysis, you're literally going to add up the pros and the cons. So let's have a look. The pros add up to 11, and the cons add up to 11. So I don't look at that one properly. What you would usually do in that case then is put another point in and look at that. So try and change it that way. Or what you can do is go back and look at maybe there's something you can change. So there's a shortage of skilled labor. You can always train people. So maybe we change the 3 to a 2, which in this case will change the 11 to a 10. and this will make it easier for you to see. So the pros, in other words, the things for changing or making the second mind outweigh the negative of not creating the mind. So force field analysis will help you make your choice. So today, guys, we've looked at being creative, problem solving, thinking outside the box, and just remember, everybody's creative. It's just about developing it. Looney.
All right, guys, we have reached the end of our show, but thank you so much for communicating with me, asking us so many questions and giving us positive feedback. Thank you so much for everything. How did you find the show today?
I love creativity is the best for me.
Are you a creative person?
I love being creative. Yeah.
I'm also creative. I paint, I draw, I do all the things, but I'm not a businessy type of person.
You can put the two together.
We can, hey?
Yeah, why not?
Start a business of our own.
I like that.
Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. It was great to have you on our show. Oh, we've got a few questions. Victor Scanius is asking, can you guys explain all legislation of ACT and raw sectors?
We did legislation, previous lesson. So if you guys looks on the website, Learn Extra, you'll find the stuff.
Victor, I'm sure you're watching, so you heard what Tanya said. She did it previously, so you'll get all your answers there. And then while she is asking, what are SETAs?
SETAs.
SETAs.
Yes. It's Sector Education and Training Authority. SETAs form part of the National Skills Development Act and levies. And again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, I did SETAs with legislation.
There you go. So guys, all your questions have been answered. Thank you so much for being with us. It was great. It was lovely. We had a fun time. We answered all your questions. The Twitterverse was very, very, very quiet. So next time I'm here, I want you guys to be hitting me up and blowing up the Twitterverse, talking to me on Twitter, asking me questions on anything that you want to know about the show. Thank you so much to Macmillan for sponsoring the show. It was great to have you with us in studio. So from us, guys, thank you so much for being with us. And until next time, goodbye.
Through new ways of thinking. So let's think about, I love the invention of an MP3 player. For a very long time, when I was growing up, the cool thing was to have a Walkman, which was a tape. I don't even know if some of you know what that is. If you don't know, go ask your parents. So you'd have the tape player, and you'd have to wear this big old thing, and then we got cool, and we got CD players, and then we had this big old, imagine the size of a CD, and you carrying that around. And then through somebody being creative and using technology that created MP3 players. Now we can walk around with something about this size in our pocket and listen to music all day. And all of those things happened because somebody sat and they thought about, what is the problem? The problem is it's too big to walk around with this big thing on your hip like a CD, and it developed from there. So all of you mindsetters out there, remember, every one of us has the potential to be a great entrepreneur. So look around you and see what everybody else isn't seeing. Another creative thing would be to think creatively, to assist you in making a success of the business in a competitive business world. And another point, I'm going to do one more point with you, you can get the rest on the website. Creativity is to use new ideas on existing challenges. Now, if you think back to that lesson we did on the grade 11 techniques with Scamper, for example, lessons ago we looked at creative thinking techniques, which you did in grade 11, and I'm going to remind you about that a little bit later on. So we're going to start the lesson off by looking at some keywords. So the very first keyword I want you to look at is creative thinking. So what is creative thinking? It's basically using your brain power to solve problems. Now, the nice thing with being creative or creative thinking is that it's not necessarily something you're born with. Yes, you could be born with it, but it's something you can learn and improve on. The second concept is being vague. So vague is just not something that's not properly defined. Now, you can imagine if there's a business situation and something is vague, obviously you're not going to be able to make the right choices and your business might suffer. And the last concept is unconventional. Now, this is when something is conventional, and it means that it's not done in the normal way, and it is new, different, or innovative. And I'm going to tie back into this a little bit later on, But being innovative is so important as an entrepreneur. You need to go out there and look at what everybody else is looking at, but see it in a different way. And that is what being creative is, and that's what being innovative is, really. Now, let's go to the first slide. The first slide, we're looking at creative thinking. Now, the very first part of creative thinking is that a person is creative if they can perceive things.
Welcome to all you grade 12 mindsetters. Yes, it's a Thursday and it's time for business studies. I am Looney and with me is Tanya. How are you doing, Tanya?
I'm really well, and you?
I'm good, thank you. So what are we doing on today's show?
Today we're looking at business solutions, but more specifically being creative in business and how that's going to help you as an entrepreneur and your business just grow.
Okay, so you heard it for yourselves, grade 12s. We're doing business solutions and whatever Tanya said. So Tanya, go to your board.
Okay.
While I tell the mindsetters a few more bits of information. So you guys can hit me up on Twitter at LearnExtra, on Facebook at facebook.com/LearnExtra. Do not forget to download all your show notes at learnextra.co.za/live. Talk to me, ask me any questions, and I'll be on the page constantly giving you feedback. I'd like to thank Macmillan for giving us this great show, and thank you for sponsoring us today. I'll hand over to Tanya right now and we'll get the show on the road.
Hi guys, so like I said earlier, today we're going to be looking at being creative. Now, a few things differently. Now, a nice way of thinking about this is if you take a piece of blank paper and you put it on a table and you put 4 people around that and they look at this piece of paper, chances are one person's going to look at that piece of paper, that blank piece of paper, and say, oh, it's so boring. And somebody else, they might think and look at this piece of paper and go, oh my word, there's a world of possibilities here. This can be turned into an airplane. I can draw on it. I can change the shape of it. And that is what being creative is about. You can look at the blank piece of paper, or you can see all the possibilities that's there. Now, the next one, creativity involves being innovative. In other words, introducing new ideas. Also, being creative or creative thinking would be when you think outside the box. And another point, to look at challenges in a different way. Now again, can you see how this all ties back to business? You want to start a new business, or you're lucky and you see a gap in the market and you use your creative thinking in conjunction with being an entrepreneur to start this business. So creativity goes hand in hand with starting a business, running a business, and even just being successful in general. Another thing with creative thinking, creative thinkers always think in original and open-ended ways. Now, he or she creates new circumstances, take a product, and you change it around. You look at what is the existing product, what can I add to it, what can I take away from it to make it something completely different. And again, so remember, I'm just tying you back into that, grade 11 creative thinking. They can bring this into your grade 12 finals, prelims. So if you don't have those notes, look on the website. I've put some on for you before, and just catch up with those. The next thing I want to look at today is why is creative thinking so important to business? Now, at school, you need to be creative when you're doing your work, etc. Now, you can imagine if you're in the business world, if you are starting a business, you need to be creative in yourself to get that business going. Or if you're working for somebody, being creative will help the business, and in the long run, also, well, as well, yourself. So creativity, vital, vital, vital. Now, the first point here you'll see is that, do you remember our definition of an entrepreneur? So we said that an entrepreneur is someone who sees an opportunity, takes a risk, thinks creatively, and innovates. Now, remember that innovation means to bring a completely new product to the market. So as an entrepreneur, you need to be creative to help you start your business, run your business, get it going. So